Ooh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Listen, the struggle was not red. I experienced it, being deprived, being oppressed, even confused. It's enough now, we're taking the power back. We're stronger than before, we're prouder, too strong. The worst is over. From Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar. From Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar.
Welcome back to the AZAPO online political education series, and today we are hosting a number of BC elders, the women of the Black Consciousness Movement who have spent many years in exile. I have Comrade Maria Segwai, who has lived and continues to live her life in exile. It's been more than 50 years that she's continued to live in London, in England. I also have Comrade Nosipho Matshoba, who has spent many years of her life also in exile, first in Botswana, then in the United States of America. I also have Comrade Matshidiso, Moroka, who also has spent a bit of her life in Botswana first, and then migrated to the United States of America. Lastly, I have Comrade Nontobeko Yawa, who will be joining us shortly. Also lived her life in exile and continues to do so. She now resides in London in the United Kingdom. Welcome, ladies, and it's going to be an interesting conversation about your own personal and struggle experiences whilst living your lives in exile. So today we'll be just taking a journey, the journeys that you have continued to travel and traverse, living your, the shores of Azanian, not out of choice, but out of circumstance, because you were really forced to be engaged in struggle inside our country, and then in the march of time, you continued to be engaged in that struggle, outside the borders of our land, and lived many lives. And you have, various experiences to tell, and you have lived, a life that was not out of, the kind of choosing that your parents, chose for you, but, here you are, and you've managed to survive, and you've managed to make a living and a life out of the circumstances that you found yourselves in. And so we'll be spending the next hour and a half, going through those experiences, you taking us through that journey. And, I look forward to hearing and listening to your perspectives of the lives that you lived in exile. We are live on Facebook, AZAPO. We are live on the Eastern Cape platform, the Gauteng platform, the Limpopo platform, and here on Zoom. And we welcome all of you to this platform. We welcome our international viewers who have always been with us from a number of countries across the African continent, Europe, Americas, and Asia. And we enjoy your presence today. Welcome, ladies. Comrade Maria, you left our country very early on, at the beginning of our, formation of the Black Consciousness Movement. I think you left the country in around 1969, first to Botswana, and then all the way to the United Kingdom. And that's where you've lived your life and continues to do so. Can you just take us on the journey, your own journey, personal journey, of what prompted you to leave the country, and how you decided to depart, and when you landed, what kind of shocking experiences that you found when you landed in the United Kingdom?
Good afternoon, comrades. As Cynthia says, I left the country when I was about 12. When apartheid was just beginning, my parents decided to send me to Botswana to boarding school. So I spent near enough most of my education in Botswana in that time. And when I was about 15, I met this guy whom I eventually married, Cde Segwai, who at the age of 18, he decided to leave midway. His final year at college, he decided to go to the camps through Africa, ended up in East Africa. And we kept in touch. And then about 5 years later, I came and joined him. He had left the country under the auspices of PAC. So he, when he came here, eventually he ended up in London anyway. And he was working with David Sibeko in the PAC office. And when I came, I joined them. By that time, Comrade Molefe Petro and Comrade Deborah, they were here as well. And they were also members of the PAC. So it was from then on that we were active in the PAC. And then the 76 uprising happened when we then joined the BC movement. And in that time, we joined the movement, and we met a lot of people. As I kept asking, when you mentioned some names, and I say, is it so-and-so who is related to so-and-so? There was all these people who were coming after 76, immediately after 76, who were then telling us of what was actually happening in the country, that there's this new movement, which is really a departure from the PAC, the ANC, and it's run by young people, by students, and we need to join. So we were then got to know a little bit more as more and more people came, and I think there was an office which was opened. At one stage, it was run by Bani Pichana, and then Chris Matebane ran the office. We were involved. We got to know a lot more about what Biko was doing, what the AZAPO and all those organizations that were run by BC were doing. So this led to the conference, the 1980 conference, which we helped to organize in the sense that catering and doing all those things. So when the 1980 conference came, we did meet a lot of interesting people who were beginning. I mean, these were people we never knew before, but it was interesting to find out what had been happening in the country. From then on, after the 1980 conference, of course, we then carried on helping to disseminate BC programs. We were helping to really try and make ourselves heard, because at that time ANC had claimed the Soweto uprisings. They had the money, and nobody else was supposed to be in there who wasn't ANC, because they were making a lot of money. They had lots of help from the anti-apartheid movement. So it was a struggle in that sense, that we had to get ourselves heard. And anywhere where we went, councils, local councils that were promoting. It was also, at the time, South Africa was, because of the fact that people were criticizing South Africa, they had to look better. So there was this interest in making sure that they had the houses, the houses were clean themselves. So there was the race relations laws, which were being promoted all over the place. Councils, each council had a race unit. And that's where probably Nontobeko will tell you a bit about it, because she was in there as well. As we were trying to get support, Ghana support, have our work done, have our ideology heard by the British people. And also another thing was that Bo Muchupare and Comrade Molefe, they had a culture group which was called Bula. And this culture group was not just a culture group, it was also a platform for disseminating BC ideology. So this platform traveled all over Europe, all over this country. So we were involved we had children who were in the group as well, and husbands and whatever. So we had to be involved in all of that. And
thanks. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how we take this conversation forward. But I do want to hear from the other comrades. Comrade Nosi, from the conversation that we've had before, I understand you were part of the second group of the Black consciousness comrades who left the country. And first you left for Botswana, and there's, your group is the one that's referred to as the Bokwe group. Am I correct? Can you just, take us through your story? What led to your departing of the country and how you left the country, first into Botswana and then, deciding to leave for the United States. So it would be interesting to hear your part of the story.
Well, what is it? Good afternoon, people, our audience. My name is Nosipho Matshoba, and my family has always been involved somehow in the struggle. When we look back at our family tree, we realized that there was a Matshoba family which were massacred in the Eastern Cape. And you know that it's in your blood when you read history like that. But anyway, so I dropped out in high school because of Afrikaans. I couldn't do Cde in Afrikaans. It was very difficult. Or Westkende, who studies maths in Afrikaans? So, and then I did a secretarial course. And I used to visit the SASO offices with my sister Debs, and Uranwezi, when he heard that I was studying secretarial courses, he realized that he recruited me in a way and said, come here and do typing for us, because at that time it was students, it was chaotic, it was, well, not chaotic in an organized way, but he asked me that I should come and do the secretarial work for them, which I did. And I was typing for SASO, I was typing for BPC, I was typing for BCP. You know, I was an all-rounder. And it didn't seem strange, you know, because most of some of the documents that we were working on were all under the umbrella of the Black Consciousness Movement, except that you also have the student one, you also have the project one, and you also had the community one, which was the Black People's Convention. So that's how really I started with the BCM. And then, you know, as time went on and we had meetings, when people came to Johannesburg, our Steve Nabobani came to Johannesburg and had meetings, then because our offices were in town and we were also facing that thing of saying that we cannot be in town, that Group Areas Act, at some point, even though we still had a very robust conversation, we still had to move and leave town, otherwise we were going to be arrested. And the ideal place to move to was Bokwe's place in Alexander. And that's where we used to continue having our meetings. And one of the things that we used to do when we were there, I mean, we would be listening to Radio Freedom, and it inspired us because we thought, hey, we are you know, military training and all of that. So that's, you know, we used to discuss that, but at the same time, our focus was within home and making sure that the conscientizing continues until it just took off. The BCM just took off. People used to lighten their skin then, people used to straighten their hairs, and with BCM, all that stopped. People now began to realize that, I mean, we were beginning now to identify ourselves, to say that we are people, we are Black, and we are proud. You know, Bonina Simon's songs were all over the place. We are Black and we are proud. And, you know, that's how basically we started. And it was interesting because at that time, in 1972, some of the people were not even born yet. In 1972, that we were so we were so militant without any military training, but we were militant, and we were not afraid of anything, and we used to wonder. I mean, we did not even have a constitution that protected us at that time. What we were doing was what would send us to jail, Terrorism Act, you know, and but we were just militant, and we were not afraid of anything. Some of the things that we knew what we were doing, and we just did not care. We continued to work and conscientizing people. And I must say that one of the projects that was very successful was the literacy training, the Pole of Press method that we used to conscientize people, and we targeted the hostels. We targeted well, we call them helpers today, but we targeted the domestic workers, and we taught them. It was interesting how easy it is to teach somebody to read and write at the same time doing political work. You know, I don't know, should I continue or?
No, it's fine. You know, it's quite an interesting story, and you know, the story that you're telling me of the militancy and, you know, the Black and pride, you know, that you managed to inculcate in a lot of young people, led to people like Comrade Cde Moroka to leave the country, you know, post 76, because I mean, she was one of the stone throwers during that period of 1976. And it would be interesting to hear from her how, you know, she landed up in Botswana as a result of your influences. Comrade Cde?
Thank you, Comrades Simpiwe, and good afternoon to all the comrades. Yeah, I think my journey began, my politicization journey began in 1974 when we started SAZM at school. And this came about, there were two guys who came to our school to introduce us to SAZM. And the guy that I remember that left a huge impression on me was Rolla. And the reason why, you know, he left that impression, it was because of the way that he used to pronounce words, I mean, English words. You know, I think it was at the time when SASO was very strong, when they had their hair uncombed, when they, you know, they were now asserting themselves as Black people. So even the manner in which he spoke English, you know, it really caught some of us interest. So in 1974, that was early 1974, and so at school, I think it was the end of 1974. We then had new administration coming in, and one of them was Jackie Silibi. The late Jackie Silibi. He became one of the teachers because at that time they were expelled from the university. So he then taught history. So some of us were doing science at that time, and we didn't have a teacher. And when he started teaching history, I mean, the whole school could hear him, and all of us became very interested, especially when he started teaching like your French Revolution. He will teach in such a manner that, you know, he attracted a lot of us. So at that point, we decided that now, myself and some of my friends, we decided that let's just go and hear these lectures, because we didn't have any maths teacher and we were just loitering around. So we went there, and I never turned back. I just changed my subjects and continued and did I did history, which was very interesting. And interestingly, so after school, we'll meet up with him, because we'll say those who want to remain can remain, and we remained. And that's when he was giving us now. He was politicizing us, because now he began to tell us about SASO, and we didn't know what that was. Yes, we knew about SASM, but we didn't know much about the Black consciousness. And then come 76, 76, when it happened on the 16th of June, we were at school. We were writing our midterm exams, I remember. And during break, we saw these helicopters loitering around. What is happening? And then we got to know that, yes, it's happening in some parts of the school. And our school was not part of it, because the people that were representing us, they never came back to give us the feedback as to what was to happen on that particular day. So we decided we were not going back to class. So we left. And on our way, we decided, no, let's go and join the others in Kloof. We couldn't even reach to Kloof, so we had to go back. And the following day, we all gathered back at school, and we started with our riots, you know. So it went on 17th, and there were a number of activities that took place at that time. We had Azukwela where we were telling our parents that they should not go to work. There was an incident where we all decided that we should go to downtown Joburg and invade downtown Joburg, and we did that. We were very quiet. Interestingly, so, you know, we did this thing very quietly. I mean, the only person that I could talk to at home was my uncle, because he's the one who understood. So I would tell him that don't go to work today. And that's it. So when we went to Johannesburg, it was they were just surprised to see us all there, you know. So you had to change. You didn't have to wear your uniform. We had to wear like we're going to work. But I think what alarmed them is the tickets, the number of tickets that were bought on that day, single trips. You know, it was surprising. But before we could do anything, the cops were there. They just pounced on us. But what was interesting also is the unity which was there. The taxi drivers, I remember when we were running, the guy just said, get into my car. And we didn't even have money. We only had a return ticket, you know? So we just got into the car and they rushed us home. Where are you going? We had to tell. It was so nice in that sense. And even when we had Inkatha now on the side of the Boas, because I was staying not very far from the hostels. So our parents had to be on guard every evening. So they'll have to be on guard to make sure that they don't come and attack our homes. So it was really bad at that time, because Inkatha was the one that was really not in support of what was happening, because they were looking for Usiezi, you know, they wanted to see, you know, and they wanted black power. They went, you know, from house to house. So they then attacked a lot of us. So it really got bad, because some of the of our colleagues, they got arrested, you know, and so the situation was very tense. And we had to go on hiding. And in the area where I live, I remember one of the incident, the guys, I don't know how it happened, but apparently the guys hijacked the hippo. So they threw back the tear gas.
Tear gas. Yeah, I remember. Tear gas.
Tear gas, and threw it back at them. And they got out of the hippo. They were running away, so the guys just got into that hippo, and that really made them mad, because they started now raiding everyone that was associated with our school. So they will go from house to house to find out who exactly did that, and no one owned up. So it was bad.
And that took you to Botswana by that circumstance.
That could be that. No, that's one of the circumstances. But what really made me leave, it was around April. There was a knock at the door, and there was this old white guy who came in, and I looked at him. I thought he was here. Maybe they didn't pay the furniture or something. So then he asked me if I know Matshidiso. I said, no, Matshidiso is my sister, but she's not here. All right, can you please tell her that she should come and report to Proti on the 27th of April. And then I said, okay, I will inform her. I'll let her know that she should come. And I was just unfortunate, because I was not even staying at home at that time. I was staying with my aunt, so I decided to come home. That's the day he came. So when he left, my neighbors came rushing. I remember the young girl opposite our home. She came crying. She thought they had arrested me. So and she said, there are 3 cars outside. I didn't know. I just thought it was just this man. It just looked like an old white man, you know, without anything that would make me scare him. I just thought, no, he's here for something else. Only to find out, no, these were the security guys. So when they told me that, no, there are 3 cars actually outside, it really scared me. So fortunately, I have a relative in Botswana. So, and I only found out actually during this period of June 16 that my dad was arrested for PAC activities for 18 months. This I only found out in 1976. So, and that led to his aunt leaving South Africa to go and settle in Botswana with the other kids, because it was my dad and my uncle that were arrested for the PAC activities. So my grandfather had then had come to South Africa to visit. So at that time I had I had a passport which I took when we were planning to go to Swaziland, to skip to Swaziland. But you know, unfortunately, the guys were supposed to go with got arrested, so we could not leave. So I had my passport, so I decided that I'm leaving. So I left with my granddad and my cousin. And I just told my parents that no, I'm going to look for a school in Botswana because we can see that things are not fine. The only person that knew I was leaving was my cousin, because I told him that I'm not gonna come back because I am leaving. I'm going to go to Proti to go and report, because I knew that if I do that, I will not be coming back. So
Yeah. That's how you left. Quite interesting. Comrade Nontobeko, you didn't leave the country because of struggle.
Well,
you literally grew up in England, north of what is it, north of England, and you know, I hear you joined the BC movement, you know, after the 1980 conference, and you know, the leadership at the time, Abo Comrade, you know, those who were in charge, or Basil Manning and others, you know, they put you on probation. That's quite interesting, a story to tell, don't you think?
Well, it is, but I think even the beginning of my life is quite interesting, actually, because when I was reflecting back, just to say, thank you very much, Comrade Simpiwe, and greetings to the panelists and the participants. I think I can put it from the perspective of my parents, I think, because they obviously, they took me out of the country in 1960 when I was 7 years old. And we ended up in Nigeria, where I couldn't speak any language whatsoever except Xhosa. And because Data was an English teacher, ultimately I was encouraged to speak more English than my own language, and ended up learning a Nigerian language. But I think when you look at the history of his experience and my mom's experience in Nigeria, they were meeting up with other South Africans who had also left the country for one reason or another. My father had been a teacher in Cape Town. We were actually born in Cape Town. And I think they were part of this teachers union, and they met challenges and they were sacked from their jobs. And from what I've gathered historically, that my father may have been part of the unity movement, but I've got no verification of that, because it's not things they talked about around us. So everything was usually hush hush. And because we were still young, obviously, and most of our experiences was just playing and having fun. So Nigeria was meeting people like the Livingston Gotsis, the Victor Scrapen Jonas, and the Ezekiel Mpahleles, and we grew up with their children who were in Nigeria at the time. And then they moved to England. We actually ended up in England as a result of a Biafra war in Nigeria. And so there was some rumblings, but I didn't understand them until when I came to London. I was exposed to white suburbia when I first moved to England, which was in the north of England. And there you had subtle racism, you know, because of the color of your skin, etc., but you couldn't pinpoint it as a child again. So by the time I came to London, I was 21, and that was in 1975. And I eventually got a job at the Race Relations Commission that Maria mentioned. And I think there is when my enlightenment in terms of race, even my African heritage, was being brought out even more. You know, I met Caribbean friends, and we were reading more Black books written by Black authors like CLR James, etc. We only had 2 Black bookshops in London at the time, so we would visit them regularly to get ourselves empowered as such as women. And through them, I think I became more conscious. But I think the time when Black consciousness started to make a mark in my life was when I came home in 1977. It was the month that Biko was murdered. I had no idea this was happening. It was just an incredible really tense atmosphere in Port Elizabeth at the time. People were running all over the place. You know, there's a lot of movement, but it didn't make sense to me because I wasn't aware. I think I had sort of like a shield that my uncles and aunts had put around me. I remember some young people coming to claim that there's this girl from England we want to see, you know, and they're claiming to be members of my family, and my uncle chased them off the yard. And so there were things like that, and the hippos in the streets trying to knock people down and disturbing children playing in the yards. And those things had a major impact on me when I came back to London. And then I think I started socializing more because there were a lot of parties as such the ANC used to organize because they had money. It was the way of them attracting new people into their organization, etc. And I think there was quite a diverse range of people, Pan-Africanists, people, the Unity Movement people, who were traveling in and out of the country at the time, again, without clear understanding. And then I met a comrade, a BC comrade through some of my friends, and he talked about Black consciousness to me. And this is before the conference in 1980. And it was leading up to that time. And I became interested because the philosophy of Black consciousness in terms of, you know, your identity and your culture, and you connecting with those to be able to be empowered as a Black individual really kind of hit home. And it was the first time that I felt that I belonged anywhere. And so I had an interest, and then I met through Maria, started attending general meetings, because as Black consciousness at the time, it was still a little bit splintered. They were setting up the regions, etc. And you couldn't just join the movement just like that, the organization just like that. So I went through interviews. I had to write a historic paper about my background, etc. And as I said, they interviewed me. I had to go through a 6-month probation period. It was quite stringent, you know, and as I said, confidentiality was quite important because you're obviously looking at protecting people who had left the country under various circumstances. And then the BC conference did happen, and we formed all the organizations that had been banned in Azanian in 1977 on the 19th of October, which is going to be commemorated in a few weeks, were forming an external wing, what became the external wing of the Black consciousness movement in the country. So I became part of that. And I think what's important about that, the Black consciousness movement of Azania, is it is at that time that we set up the military wing, the Azanian Liberation Army. And so obviously in that context, we're now moving towards the military, developing the military arm of the organization. And a lot of strategies had to be developed to be able to build that side of the organization up. I did hold a number of positions within the region at the time, where it was secretary, because I had secretarial skills like Nosi. So, and then because I was working, my financial resources supported the organization. Maria mentioned earlier that with ANC, it monopolized the attention of the world. United Nations supported them and PAC, but when it came to us needing any exposure or support, we were told join the ANC or join the PAC to make one organization. But for me, there was never that willingness of the other liberation movements to do that. As most people know, when Biko died, he was on his way to the unity talks with the other liberation movements in the country. And we attempted it even in exile through our central committee of the BCMA. And each time those attempts were made, they faltered because of the other liberation movements wanted to feel that, you know, we were youth at the time and we didn't have a clue about any strategies in terms of bringing about the freedom of our country. So they tended to try to overpower our structure. Yeah, that's how I came to join. And as I said, I held several positions. It was secretary treasurer, then women's secretariat on the central committee. Our role here was primarily to provide support for the internal wing. And, you know, as Comrade Nosi and Comrade Cde mentioned, there were projects which were actually on the ground within Azania. And it would either be in construction, literacy schemes, farming, you know, trying to encourage our people to be self-reliant. So we would try and raise money out here. Some people who ended up being imprisoned during 76 and other incidences that happened after that. And we had organizations out here that actually would finance lawyers, etc., to try and ensure that our people could get become free from the oppressor. But yeah, I'm not quite sure if I should just summarize, leave it.
No, it's fine. I think because I mean all of that then led to you being a member of the Central Committee of the BCMA. But I'm also interested in understanding, you know, the London region of the BCMA became one of the anchor regions of that organization, and with the contributions coming, you know, from the likes of you and a lot of comrades who were all over Europe. And in essence, the London region was the one that was driving operations throughout Europe. And I'm really interested, Comrade Maria, how did you make it to be a formidable region that it was? First, from the time that you were working as part of the Black consciousness movement of South Africa, transitioning into that establishment of the BCMA as it were, and the kind of things that you were doing in London and Europe, to ensure that the influence of Black consciousness was permeating throughout Europe. I do understand a lot of things that you were doing to assist the BCMA, more especially when they were based in they had already moved from Botswana to Zimbabwe, and there was a big connection between the London region and the BCMA in Harare. Can you just take us through that phase, and maybe Comrade Ndobisi will then add the bits and pieces that she may want to add to that.
Okay, I think I can kind of take you to what we did in the region. She can then go on about because she was more involved in the Bokwe, Botswana connections, even the Azanian, Zimbabwe. Yeah, yes, the London region was, I suppose, just based on the fact that the formation of the organization was anchored here. It was by default in a way, because I think they had tried to, the conference was supposed to be in Africa. They tried in Africa, but everywhere they went, there was lots of problems. Either there was blockages from the governments that were supporting ANC, and of course they didn't want to tread on the toes. But in London, yes, we had really structures. There were very, very strict structures, as Nontobeko was just saying. We had to go through all those probations and things like that. And if there were regular meetings that were there, we had regular structures, secretaries, treasurers, and you name it. So we had also disciplinary, you couldn't miss 2 meetings and turn up without explaining why you missed these meetings. But generally, the comrades who, there was this feeling of people wanted, they were very serious about what they were doing. We made contacts with other organizations outside the country, and we had follow-ups, we had fundraising, meetings, and actually people who were in charge of going out, speaking to organizations in Europe, in everywhere. At that time, remember, as we were saying, the ANC was monopolizing all the funds. So we really had to work hard in order to get any funding at all. So again, as I said, with this Pula Arts Commune, which the comrades were running, it was part and parcel of that. They wouldn't just play music, play poetry and all that. There was always attached to it a lecture on what was happening in South Africa, on the history of the movement in South Africa, where we are at, and all that, which was things that the ANC didn't want people to really know about, because they wanted to be the only main funders, the only people who were funded by the all these other organizations. Yeah, Nontobeko can take over then for the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go for it.
The main focus of the region was really organizing to highlight a plight within the country. And getting information at that time was really very difficult, because obviously in the country itself, we were getting banned, our information was being confiscated and problems like that. So if we had opportunities where individuals were able to come out of the country and travel to the UK, we then gave them a platform from which they could then talk and widen the knowledge about what AZAPO was doing within the country. And so various platforms, this is where then all these contacts Maria is talking about were built up. Some of them were with other liberation movements in other countries, the Palestinians, the Eritreans, the Irish, who were all having their own struggles. And if we had individuals passing through the UK, then we had to sponsor them either in staying, in finance, in promotional material, producing it ourselves. I mean, I think we were very fortunate in that when they talk about Black consciousness being intellectuals, we were fortunate to have individuals who are very well informed. So some of the material we had to produce, to a point that we actually had a solidarity newsletter that we produced from the UK. And it was difficult for comrades in Europe to establish regions because of numbers, etc. And our numbers did fluctuate a lot here in the UK as well, to the point where responsibilities sometimes ended up with just a few people. So our conditions were very difficult in terms of our operational strategies and having to build to the extent. For example, anti-apartheid movement was split, and then we got support mainly from the city anti-apartheid movement, who were aligned to our thinking. So there were issues and challenges like that. We had Caribbean people who set up their own structures to support even individuals who even boycotted some of the cultural people in arts, in the arts sector. We would have our normal annual events like Sharpeville, we regularized this because this became really important, and I think was a way forward for us. We actually increased the understanding of what was going on in the country because of this. Sharpeville, June 16th, October 19th, September 12th. These were things we commemorated every single year. And, you know, and whenever, even plays, sometimes we had people coming through with plays, which were very empowering. So people would come and watch them. Maria, you try and remind me who some of the comrades were who came out with plays. These all had an impact internationally, you know. Trying to get coverage in the media was a challenge. Again, it was similar to home. There was bias coverage. And not only that, you could not get information from the news really about anything going on in South Africa. I remember coming home one year in the 80s when we had the curfew, and I was carrying documents and bringing documents back, etc. But I was coming as if I was coming to visit my family, you know, and members had to sneak documents through, you know, the policy papers we had for our conferences, etc. And then when we talk about the structure, we talk about having the units, the regions, and also the central committee of the organization, which was based in Zimbabwe now. And obviously that was the main decision-making structure of the BCMA, and the larger number of our senior members were actually in Zimbabwe. UK region managed to raise funds for the house they were living in. And as I said to you, one of our biggest strategies was trying to fundraise. So, and then I think Maria reminded me the other day, there was also a vehicle. You know, we also arranged for training in Eritrea. We built contacts that way for our military to go and train in Libya. And, you know, the Central Committee would go and meet, obviously, with these countries and then establish training programs. And then our members got trained in that way. So yeah, being Zimbabwe, that was the strategic positioning for AZAPO, because then it could go in and out of the country with its military arm. And of course, it never gets covered. It's always seen as if it was ANC rather than BCM. But we are aware that we played a very significant role in destabilizing at that time.
Thanks, Comrade Betsy. I just want to check. I mean, you know, you're talking about the military operations or the establishment and the activities therein. You know, Comrade Nosipho will tell you how difficult it was, you know, for them to engage in such military training. You know, she was telling me privately that, you know, in their group, the Bokwe group, some of them went to, you know, train in Libya, obtain military training in Libya. And those of them who were women were not allowed to travel to Libya because they were women. And it would be interesting to, you know, tell us of your experience, Comrade Nosipho, around Botswana. I mean, some of you landed at Botswana and, you know, you thought you were landing at, you know, a liberated country, and you found it to be different in terms of your experience. I'm really interested to understand your thoughts around that.
Yeah, you know, when we left South Africa, let me just add to our work in South Africa that the type of work we were doing at that time, you know, it really posed a lot of danger to us. And like I said before, that we did not have a constitution to protect us. The constitution that we had was the Terrorism Act, which will land you in jail or even get you killed. But you know, we still continue to work even under the difficulties that we had when we had meetings with people coming from Durban and the Eastern Cape to Johannesburg, and then we met in this little office of ours, and at some point we had to leave Johannesburg town and go into the township to continue our conversation or our discussions. And the place that we used to go to was Bokwe Mafuna's two-room house in Annex, and we all congregated there, and it was very, actually we were able to do a whole lot of strategies and discussions there. But also remember that, under the BCM, people have to understand that it started with SASO, but SASO was only the student organization, mainly university students. And how do we incorporate other people? And then we formed that Black community, Black People's Convention, which incorporated now the community. But we also had to get our youth in there, and we started the NAYO, National Youth Organization, which was the NAYO, which now included the youth. And then at school, at high school, we also had the SASM, South African Student Movement, which is now high school students, I would say. But, in all of that, we managed to get the whole country involved and understood what BCM was, and understood that we have to identify ourselves. We have to make sure that people understand that when we say Black, what do we mean Black? We don't mean the skin pigmentation. No, we don't mean that. We also had Indians, within the BCM. We also had colored people, the so-called colored people, which I have a problem with saying that way. But we were all under one umbrella of the Black consciousness movement, Indian colors and Africans. And it took like wildfire the whole of South Africa, because we had one common enemy, which was apartheid, Amapun. And this is who we were fighting. But anyway, after a while, then they did ban the, white people, they think that if you kill one person, the whole thing will be dead. And they also, of course, they killed Mtuli, the person that we were working with at the SASO offices, and he was brutally killed. That was really the first casualty, which was very, very close to us in BCM. Then they started with the banning orders. They banned people that they thought, if we ban people and they keep them in one place, then the BCM will be no more. Unfortunately, they did not realize that. They should have listened to Helen Suzman, who Helen Suzman said, I told you people, if you ban these people, they will go out and get military training and come back and kill us. I mean, he's talking about, the white person that he was, even though he was, it was said that he was in the opposition party. What opposition? Against who? Because the opposition party was opposition against Black people. But with the banning orders, we realized that we needed to do something else. And then we discussed the military training, and military training meant leaving the country and going out for military training. We were not clued up with some of the politics that were going on. We only realized when we get outside Ubuti, things are not as they are. And when we went to Botswana, the four people, myself, Bokwe, Ranwesi, and Tebogo Mapule, who has since passed on. When we got to Botswana, we realized that Botswana, at least let me say, I thought Botswana was an independent country and it was freedom. We thought we were going to be a free country. And when we got there, it was something else. I mean, one of the things that shocked me was that there was this white policeman who was dressed in short khakis, and he was a policeman. He was dressed in their police uniform, which looked like the South African bull. And that was a shock. Country, what's going on here? This is a free country, and here's this white person. And also, as we were being interrogated in a way by the Botswana government, this white guy came with a dead leopard, and he said that he killed his dead leopard in his farm because it was killing his stock and, you know, in Komozaki. And, you know, when these guys, Botswana, asked us, how did you come here? And we told them how we came here, and they said that, you know, the place that this guy killed this leopard, it's the place that you guys were walking around, and we walked at night. Remember that we went to the Nugana, where we met Noranwesi, because Oranwesi had to come from Sibasa. I must say that we kicked their ass there, Amapuni, because they did not realize that we can actually get Uheri out of the Sibasa, and then we met in Dinokana. And then at night, we traveled at night to Botswana. And this is why I was saying that we realized afterwards that we walked around where the leopards were still roaming in a different country. But, you know, this is my perception of that. So we got to Botswana anyway, the long story short, and we had to, I mean, the Botswana government refused us to leave Ilovac because we wanted to go to Exile, where we were going to meet Nabotiro and make Exile our stronghold. But we were stopped from doing that, and we were told that we cannot leave Ilovac, so we did not leave Ilovac. And at the same time, Utiro, when he got home, I skipped some things. Utiro, when he got home, he realized that he was told that he was going to be banned, so he had to come back to Botswana. And then Nyanake, he went straight to Khat. The other thing that people have to understand is that Utiro was busy working on establishing and strengthening that SADC sort of relationship. And, you know, it's SASM, which is the Southern African Student Movement, which is different from the South African Student Movement, which was were student, high school students. And this SASM was like SADC type of student. We wanted to liaise with African countries to find out what is it that as students they are missing, what is it that we are missing, because in South Africa, students, we did not have any outside link with anybody. So we wanted that link with the other students so that we can relate and we can share ideas and we can share strategies with other students. And this is what Utiro also was working on, the Southern student movement. And but anyway, when we got to Botswana, we wanted the military training. That's what we wanted. And when we got to Botswana, we met with this unity movement guys. And the unity movement guys, I mean, I'm still odd with the type of information and the type of nurturing that these guys gave to us. And they asked us, City, we are going for a military training, but where are you going to do that? And we didn't know. Again, we were thinking, hey, MK, we come to Sizwe, that's what we are going to do and get military training. And then after you do that, what do you do with it? And you know, something that we never thought about. And you think that you will come bringing arms and march down Botswana and go into South Africa and go and shoot the Boers, or you'll go where? You'll go through Rhodesia? Think about it, you know. But ask yourself, what exactly is it that you are trying to fight? Get that, you know, get that information and plan properly, instead of thinking that you're going to get guns from there, and you think Botswana will allow you with the guns to march down in Botswana and go to South Africa or Rhodesia, going to South Africa to go and fight. It doesn't happen like that. You must also have your information. You must also have your strategy. They gave us books. Mao Zedong, books that we did not know anything about, Abo Mao Zedong, Abo Lenin, they told us that we should read these books and be able to plan. When you say you want to go and fight the apartheid, what is it that you are fighting? Have you really analyzed the situation? Do you know how many soldiers are in South Africa, what their military strength is and all of that? Do you know who you're going to fight? So we had to think about things like those and stop and now start having political discussions. And in that Bokwe group, that's where we started having the political discussions. And every week we would take a book and read a book, and somebody would do a presentation, and we will analyze. Every morning we listen to the news, South African news, and then we analyze the South African news. I mean, we really had political discussions, serious political discussion. Actually, I think we grew up there. And after a while, there was a whole lot of onslaught of people now leaving South Africa, coming into Botswana, and with the little bit of accommodation that we had to start now organize where are people going to live. And most of the people who came through wanting military training, we had to stop them and say, hey, guys, some of the people, we had to talk to them and say, some of you, we cannot just leave the country, because when we go back to South Africa, we need to know, where are we going to land? Who are we going to trust? Who is going to do what for us? And then we started to now build cells within South Africa, knowing that the cell formation, who is going to be our our in-house or our home-based people that we're going to do the trusting. And that was a lot of work. That was a lot to convince other people that you cannot just, and then there was the ANC, of course, talking to the Botswana government. Botswana government, anybody who comes into Botswana, let us know so that we can take these people. And they didn't even spend a day. When they came in at night, they were shipped out into Zambia or Tanzania, wherever they went. So there was that struggle between us and the ANC. We should stop people before they go to ANC, so that we inform them, if you join ANC, know what you are doing. You might be stranded wherever you are. You guys don't have even travel documents. Make sure that you have documents that will allow you to come back if things are not so nice where you are going. Some people listened, some people did not listen. And this is why in Botswana now we had different formations. We had our Cde, we had different groupings within Botswana, but we always had political discussions, all of us. And then we did a whole lot of studying and then as we were all doing this thing, then we had to realize that we want military training. The African countries only recognize two, ACC or PAC. So how are we going to do that? Yeah. So we had to stop there. Yeah.
No, that's an interesting story to listen to. Comrade Cde, after all of that, I think you were either the fourth or the fifth group, that got to Botswana and, got in there under that, milieu, and you were also very, militant and wanting, this military training. I suppose just about everybody wanted to go into exile, wanted to, get trained so that they can come back. And all of a sudden, there you are finding yourself in the United States, studying and joining the DC region of the BCMA and getting involved in those activities. Share with us.
Yeah, comrades.
Can I just say something? Can I just say something before?
Yeah.
about BCMA. You know, when we were still trying to organize ourselves into military, then there came the scholarship people.
Yeah. About Cde.
Not our CD, not our CD. The United States scholarship people, the London, UK, Australia, offering us scholarships because now strategy was to dissuade us from going for military training and going to school, and they sort of changed our minds or changed our course and threw scholarships at us. And most of us, you know, we went for the scholarships and we went to the universities, United States, UK, but again, Australia, even when we went to Australia. And then, of course, besides that, the Nigerians also came up with their education scholarships, and they were offering us scholarships, and they also assisted us with the SAPO, because now SAPO was also born there, and in Nigeria was supporting SAPO. And okay, Cde, sorry.
Cde.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Arrived in Botswana. It was a bit awkward at the police station because, you know, they would ask you all sorts of questions, and when you tell them that where you belong, you know, because I think most of us said SSRC, you know, because this is when we left home. It was because of the SSRC. So at the police station, they would tell you that no, we don't have that. You only have two. It's either you go to the ANC or you go to the PC. At that time, the ANC is there. You know, they are just waiting for a moment where you say, yes, I'm ANC, then they take you. But if you insist, so anyway, when I insisted, I said, no, I don't belong to any of the two. Then there was a lady called Tato Bering. Tato Bering and some other lady comrades, I think, realizing that a lot of young students who came to Botswana, they were now being taken by mainly ANC. They decided that they will also camp at the police station. So she was there. She came and I introduced myself, and they said, "Oh, okay, so you belong to Tato group." So that's what they would say. You belong to Tato group. I said yes. So then Tato came, and then she took us to Waza. Waza, it was now a house. Waza stands for Women of Azanian. So this was a house where mainly the women comrades were staying, and this is the house that was organized by Brigade Abam when she was still working for WCC. That's the World Council of Churches, you know, as part of a home for all the young women. So we stayed there. Then we met other comrades, you know, some of former schoolmates. So, and we were also joined by the Zimbabwean women that we stayed with. We were also joined by a few of SWAPO women. So now there were a number of communes. You know, Waza was one of them. There was another group that stayed at the farm. We call it a farm because it was a dilapidated house. So they had to make it, you know, as homely as they could. And then there were other houses. There was the Kolwezi, there was Katima, there was the Guinea. So there were quite a number of those. And when I say communes, those were all BC affiliated comrades who stayed in those different places. And like Nosi has explained, we used to have a number of political discussions. I mean, for us, it was every Friday where the groups will meet But in our home, in our house, like the Waza, we usually had our political discussions every other day. So we'll give each other assignments, and then you know, the elders like your Tato, Osmapiri, they will come and we will discuss some books, you know. So that's how it was. And now what we could not understand when we got to Botswana is that this is a protracted struggle. We just thought we'll just go out, get trained, and then go back home. Like Nosi explained. It never dawned on us that, you know, we'll stay. I mean, we used to look at Botata, we used to call them Botata, you know, our unity movement, those who left the ANC, they used to call them the Committee of 10, you know, so, and they would sit down with us. I remember Utata one time looked at me and said,
And what's that?
Tata, yeah, baninzi bokubo utata uvutela so these are otata tata be unity movement, tata be, like I said, those that had left, you know. So we used to call all of them abotata. You know? So and these were the elders that have been around, that know what or knew what they were talking about. But for Tina, we used to look at them and say, there's no way we are going to be here for 10 years. There's just no way. So we just thought that they were not serious about going back. They were just now comfortable. So they would explain to us, you know, how they got where they are. And we used to say, Tata, we are young. When you left, you were older, but now we are young and we are ready. So all we need is that if you can just show us, give us a light and show us where we can get the training and go back home. And like Lucy explained, you know, they will be asking us all sorts of questions, and we thought, no, they really are not serious. But we realized with time that no, it is serious. So we with political discussions, we got also to realize that you needed to have the political understanding. We needed to understand what you mean when you say you are in the liberation struggle. We began to understand that it's complex, it's not as easy as we thought. But what also I think was also pushing us is that at that time when we were in was, I think around 1970, 79, 78, 79, there were activities. The PAC was having activities. At least I would say the PAC, because we were closer to them. They were not living far from us, so we could see them, you know, coming in and out, and they will come also to Waza. So you will see 3, and then after 2 weeks you will see 1, and they will tell us that now they are on a homegoing program. And we're wondering, when are we going to get involved also in the liberation, in the military struggle. So it continued like that. And there was a lot of pressure also from the Botswana government, because they didn't want us there. They really want us to see us gone. So they will pump us with a lot of scholarships. I remember in 1979, I was asked by the Botswana Christian Council to go and represent the South African, the South African youth in one of the conferences in Cameroon. You know, I wasn't that much religious, and I could not understand why they had to ask me to go there, because I kept saying, what is it that I know? Because they would be quoting things that I don't know. So I had to go and consult with Reverend Makudu. Reverend Makudu was one of the bishops. He was South African, but he was now staying in Botswana. So I had to go and consult. He said, no, it has got nothing to do with you being religious or not. You just go there, you just tell your story as a youth from South Africa. So I agreed, it was myself actually and Comrade Bukala who were asked to go. So we agreed. But eventually I left alone because Comrade Bukala decided that he wasn't going. So I left. We went, but it turned out to be a very good conference because I just went there. I remember when they said when they called my name and they said a youth from South Africa. So I just went up the podium with my fist high in the air, and it just excited everyone who was in there because I think most of them were there as part of the Christian movement, and I was coming from a different angle. So we had that presentation. It went well, and then afterwards, then I was nominated to go and represent now the African youth in Germany. Then we had to choose. I chose to go to GDR because I said I really want to see how the communists live. So I chose to go to GDR. At that time, there were two Germans, and then I also chose to go to Norway. So so those were some of the things that I think they were trying to make sure that we forget about this military training that we're talking about. So they made sure that either you go to school or or you get involved in one way or the other. Then I came back. Came back, and then we had a lot of interaction, not only with BC groupings in Botswana. We also had a lot of interaction with the PAC. It was quite normal that we also had discussions with the PAC. And as a result, we were also invited to a PAC women's conference which took place in Tanzania. So it was myself and Comrade Jitudu. So we had to go to Tanzania. I must say it was also an eye-opener for us because when we were there, we wanted to stay and they wanted to go back with us. I mean, the comrades who were there, they were saying, guys, you are in the front line and look at where we are. We are far from home. You guys are closer to home and we are ready, we want to go. But then they keep telling us that, we should wait. The time is not, it's not right yet. They were frustrated. Some of them were frustrated because they wanted to leave. But we were also encouraged because we could see that most of them were trained and here we are, this is what we wanted. And we could not get at that time, because of the conditions in Botswana. Yeah. So yes, there are quite a number of activities that really took place. And then coming back from Tanzania, it was Bokwe. Coming back from Tanzania, that was in 1980. I remember, I think it was like a week after we had arrived. And we were told that we have to go to Bokwe. There's a camp, and we were told that camp. I mean, the Angolans used to live there, and we resisted. We said we are not going to go to Bokwe. We are not going. So we had to hide. So some of us went to the university to go and hide. At that time, I was training at Marina. That's a hospital. I was doing pharmacy there. So, and then some of the comrades came, and then they also hid at my place. So they came with a truck to come and collect. So they couldn't find anyone, especially in Waza, because most of us had left the place. But we were just told that even if you can hide, you still have to go. Because if they find you here, it's either they will deport you back to South Africa, or you get the earliest scholarship out of the country. At that time, most of the comrades had left. They had gotten the scholarships, so they had left and gone to a number of countries. Yeah. So then it was.
I can imagine. We've just touched the surface in terms of all of your stories. There is no way that we can conclude all of this in 90 minutes. 90 minutes is very short for a story of this experience. And maybe as we move towards conclusion, Maria, I don't know what you can tell us, of the 50 years that you've spent, in Europe. Well, what is the most, or that one thing that you say, look, this is it in terms of your experience, living away from home.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's always very easy to talk about the negatives. It's of what I wish is what I'm gonna say, because at the end of the day, it's those negatives that your children, we bring them up here, they can't even go and see their cousins. They're not, our parents die and we can't even go home because you're not allowed to go into the country. And you bring the children up here and you keep saying, are you all right at school? They won't tell you, because some of us worked in the race relations, whatever they call it, industry here. So we were very sort of on top of what we hope our children are not suffering. But then the children were aware that you're going to cause a lot of problem for them at school. So they wouldn't tell you. It's only recently that they come up and they tell you, yeah, we suffered this and you gave us all these African names, and people were taking the mickey and calling us this, that, and the other. So it's those things where I suppose some people may think that when you have children abroad, they had plain sailing, had good education. No, didn't, even today it doesn't work like that. There is still that feeling that you feel you missed something. You missed, we couldn't do what you wanted because of the constraints of how we were here. We couldn't do certain things to help our children or enhance ourselves. We just have to focus on what it is that we're doing. But other than that, I suppose we're still alive.
That's the most important part. Comrade Mercy, as you close, what is that one thing that strikes you as you think back?
Yeah, maybe it's not, but one of the things that I'll always laugh about today is when I got to the United States. Somehow I was in the southern part of the United States, where people were speaking in this southern accent, and I could not understand African Americans because of their southern accent. I had a dilemma that as a Black consciousness person, I cannot communicate with my own sisters in the US because of the accent. That was my culture shock.
Yes. Yeah. Comrade Matshidiso? You are on mute, eh?
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I was coughing, so I had to mute myself.
It's okay.
I'm saying I'm smiling because I remember also when I first got to the US, there's this perception that if you are not from America or from Europe, then you don't know English. So when we get to school, they then want us to do English for non-English speaking or something like that. And I refused. I said, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to take that. So they then took me to, I think it's the head of English at that school. And I was sitting there waiting to see this man. So he didn't even say anything. He just said to me, where are you from? I said, I'm from South Africa. And then he just gave me a piece of paper and he said, just write 2 paragraphs for me. I said, on what? I said, just anything. So I said, okay. So I said there, and then what came to my mind was education. I said, all right. So now I wrote about education for liberation. So I just put two paragraphs. He just read one paragraph. He said, okay, we don't need to go through that. Now there was an African American that was sitting next to me. So I'm asking you, what are you writing? He said, no, they said I should write something. I said, okay, let me see. I could not believe it. I could not, I was just shocked because here I am, I'm from South Africa. I'm expecting that I'm in America, Americans, they speak English, they know English. I look at the tense. I said, no, man. I looked at that thing, I said, oh, okay. I said, this is how you write. I said, yeah. So I said, all right. So I just left it like that. But I was shocked. That was for me a cultural shock because, you know, you really think that these people, they speak English, they know English better than us. But when it comes to writing and expression, it's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah.
Sure. No, thanks, Comrade Cde. Comrade Nosipho, as you round up, I mean, it's been a great conversation starter. I think we've really touched the surface in terms of all of the work that all of you were doing, for the Black consciousness movement of Azania and, for the struggle in Azania in general. I mean, it was, I suppose, through a lot of you that we were able to connect with a number of solidarity groups. I mean, I'm reminded, about some of the structures or organizations that came to support our struggle, like, the Azania Committee, the AAPRP, and so forth. Those are some of the groupings that, we managed to connect with through your efforts. And I mean, you used to commute between London and Africa, Zimbabwe, Botswana, as a member of the Central Committee of the BCMA at the time, leading the women's desk. And when you came back for a few years before, a couple of years back, into AZAPO, and again, leading the women's desk of AZAPO. And, you've been in the women's struggles and at the forefront of, those women's struggles, both in exile and in country. And I don't know how you want to comment on the role, just on general role of women, in the struggle of this country as you close off. I do intend to probe more about, solidarity groups, but that's a subject of another conversation, with people like, Botumika Daima that, work with some of us, during the Mumia Abujaban campaigns. And, there's also people like Marianne Bulsma, who was part of the Azania committee, that came to Azania at, I think I first saw them at the 1992 Congress of AZAPO in Port Elizabeth. So it would be interesting just to get your reflections on some of those, occasions, Comrade Dobbs.
Thank you, Comrade Simpiwe. I think in summary, it's just to say that I think we should actually be proud as AZAPO for our achievements during the apartheid era. It was really very difficult and very challenging to pull our resources together in terms of personnel, in terms of finance, if we needed it, in terms of information. And, when I was listening to Comrade Cde and Nosi, when they were talking about Botswana, where the Central Committee was based, the young people who are coming out, I mean, visiting Zimbabwe, the challenges we had were that they were young people, students who were coming out, running away from home before they've even completed their education and those kind of issues. So to some extent, you had to assess the level of development of each individual to be able to place them even within the movement itself. And we had challenges with the international arena in terms of United Nations, the Organization of African Union, where they didn't recognize the Black consciousness movement. Now, when you look at it in the context of those challenges, where would women actually fit into that? I mean, we had women who came out into exile, whether as family members, because in a lot of situations, women could not always join an organization. Why the students themselves, they were still single. So for them, they were on fire, and they were still able to take the kind of risks they were taking at the time. So I think that made it possible for them to actually begin to be active within the movement. But I think a lot of problems we had in mobilizing was a lot to do with resources more than anything, because we talk about equality, we try and encourage women to be involved just as much as men, you know, but if you don't have the resources to enable it, it becomes a problem, you know. But we have had women in our organizations as presidents of the organizations, within secretariats. They have featured over the time that we have existed, you know. But I think ultimately, if you're going to have see any substantive change, AZAPO would need to be, the Black Consciousness Movement would need to be in a better position in terms of resources, because that's what helps to enable women to participate effectively. That's what enables anyone, whether it's the youth, the students, the youth, or any other generation, to get involved within any structure. But we have managed, despite, you know, being held back. Even in the country today, I think when you look at the current democratic structure of the country, AZAPO struggles because it's been alienated because of the ANC and the status quo where the resources rest. So we will only see change when there's a balance in terms of equitable distribution, so that women can participate more effectively. I mean, we've done it through structures like Imbeleko, the Domestic Workers Union. Trade unions were very, very important, I think, for us during the 80s, because we could actually identify resources through the trade union structures, even though we operated outside the legal system of apartheid. But we were able to do literacy classes, farming, building, construction, etc. through them. So for me, self-reliance is also a way forward. You know, we still need to go back to those means of survival, because the system as it stands today is not going to enable us. And whoever have skills need to actually project those within the community and try and set up programs like that. Unfortunately, it will not necessarily come from structures because the finances aren't always there, but we have comrades who are working, etc. We need to find ways through the challenges. But as you've heard from us, I mean, I think women have a voice, and it's just finding a way to enable us to have that voice, a louder voice, and to enable us to even be more active on the ground.
No, well, thanks to Comrade Maria Segwai and Comrade Matshidiso, Moroka, Nosipho Matshoba, and Nontobeko Yawa for agreeing to spend the afternoon with us, and it's been great. And I'm sure, as you have listened to them, you know, they have a huge, huge story to tell. We've just, you know, really touched, you know, the surface. We haven't moved beyond the introduction to, you know, the book that you know, contains the story of their lives and their contribution to the Azanian liberation struggle, and you know, the work they did under the banner of the Black Consciousness Movement of Azania. So I really look forward to engaging more with, you know, the stalwarts of our movement and all those who have made telling contributions to the struggle of our land. Next week, we are continuing with you know, our programs. We will be focusing on, you know, the Black Wednesday activities. I will be having Comrade Butseng Khokong and Comrade Matata Tsedu reflecting on, you know, the bannings of the BC organizations some 43 years ago. It's been great, and I look forward to engage with you in the next coming week. Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah. It's time to have
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Listen, the struggle was not red. I experienced it, being deprived, being oppressed, even confused. It's enough now, we're taking the power back. We're stronger than before, we're prouder, too strong. The worst is over. From Cape to Cairo, I'm Morocco to